Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Game of Thrones podcast we are doing. We are going through all the episodes of the last season of Game of Thrones. This episode is entitled The Bells. And shit gets real in this episode. So I'm joined here with my friends Aaron and Jake. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Jake.
Hey guys, my name is Aaron.
Love it.
That's me.
I love it. Yeah, welcome. I'm just going to adjust some volumes again real quick because you guys are a little weird and I want it to be a little nicer for the people's ears back home. But
Respectful.
So I'm just going to go ahead and start off on this one with my thoughts on this episode because I'm going to make it pretty quick. Initially, I really liked this episode. Only certain aspects of it. There's a lot that they got wrong that I thought was horrible, like the Clegane Bowl and everything with Jaime. But the whole twist of Dany going crazy, I really liked initially. And I just thought it was like cool visually and to kind of see, even if it made absolutely no sense whatsoever for her character to just start murdering a bunch of women and children. And those are my initial thoughts. So who'd like to go next?
I'll go next.
Cool.
First I'd like to point out that I think a lot of people are really upset at the fact that Dany has, quote-unquote, turned evil because they really liked her character and they have their feelings hurt from that. All of the criticisms I give in this podcast from now on isn't that. I actually think it's kind of awesome that she ends up being the final antagonist, especially when she's been a point of view character for so long. I think that's awesome. But I do think it has been handled horribly in the show, and it's not just this season at fault. But one thing in this episode that I can point to with my finger and be like, this exact second was done incorrectly and could be fixed, is right after the bells start ringing. So Daenerys has been killing all the catapults and then doing like awesome things, just like basically winning the whole battle by herself, and then the bells toll and they surrender. Then there's a moment where the audience doesn't know that she's going to continue to just kill them for fun. And the way they transition to that is that they show Daenerys on her dragon breathing heavily, and then she continues to kill them. And it's like it's almost like they're trying to say, oh, now she's going crazy and now she's killing them. That beat, that direction that they gave her was not the way to go. And also, it's not at all an acting issue either. It was choreographed to a T because she was on her dragon. You already know they had to plan out any shot where she's on her dragon like decades in advance. So I thought they simply could have shown the bells ringing and having her maybe look down intently and just continue killing without that pause, without that break. Because it didn't make any sense to have her, like, all of a sudden out of nowhere start breathing heavily and be like, oh my god, when nothing happened. But
yeah,
that's my...
Other than last episode with Missandei, like, there really was nothing. It did just feel completely random because she didn't go after the soldiers. She didn't go after Cersei. She went straight to murdering women and children, specifically just women and children, which throughout every season prior to this was the only people that she was really trying to save. Was like, oh, this children got burnt by my dragons. I feel horrible about this. Like when the one guy brings his burnt child in front of her and he's trying to save all these all these women and children and slaves and whatnot. And then she just goes straight to burning them to death. And I don't understand why at all.
I mean, her burning women and children, maybe something brings her to that. Even maybe I would be more okay with whatever brings her to that is off screen. But I needed to see that she planned to burn them from the start, because nothing happened in the battle to her to make her change her mind and make her want to decide then to kill women and children. That decision had to have already been made for me to believe it, and the way they showed her breathing heavily, like in distress, after the bells were ringing made no sense. The bells were not something that happened to her to make her want to kill women and children. If anything, that should make her want to stop killing people.
Yeah.
The bells rang.
And I'm gonna let Jake get to his words, but I just want to point out that it was extremely ballsy of them to air this episode on Mother's Day, when they have literally just children being ripped from their mother's arms and then their throats slit and then burned and all that shit. It's like, damn, that was ballsy. But Jake, what did you think?
You guys are pretty much hitting the nail on the head, but this episode, production-wise, stunt-wise, set-wise, acting-wise, just about everything except the writing is a 10 out of 10. The writing just absolutely takes a nosedive and tanks. This episode, in contrast to the last episode, makes almost no sense. I feel like HBO should pay me to be a writer, because I had this idea when I was watching the show, but all you had to do is take Rhaegal's death. Take Rhaegal, don't kill him in the last episode. Actually, just delete the last episode. Take Rhaegal, have him also be a part of the attack on King's Landing. Then when the bells ring, have Cersei give a signal as they're surrendering to shoot a scorpion bolt and kill Rhaegal. And then Daenerys now has 100% reason to snap. And it gives Cersei something to do. Cersei, a character who should have been plotting some sort of trick, some sort of anything, does nothing in this entire episode but drink wine and stare out at King's Landing getting burned. She doesn't have anything to do with wildfire as a trick, even though it shows up. She just lets everything burn, and she has no plan. And I think that bothers me most, because the only reason Daenerys is burning anything right now is because Missandei died at least 2 days ago, based on how the show, which the timing is absolutely fucked in Season 8, let me clarify. Time is, you cannot tell how many days or what has happened, but I know they've said Jon's army was at least 2 days behind Daenerys, so the only reason she has to snap is because Missandei died. Yet that was easily fixable to just have, they could have even just done something where the bells ring, everyone's surrendering, and then Cersei gives a signal for a scorpion to shoot at even Drogon. Even if they wanted to kill Rhaegal in the last episode, they could have just done anything to make Daenerys snap. Like, the idea that she's going to be the Mad Queen is a perfectly fine idea, but how they get there is the laziest thing I think I've ever witnessed. It's
abysmal.
It's awful. Those are my thoughts on just that scene alone.
I totally agree, and like I said, I don't think this season is the only thing to blame, but you're 100% right, where if they changed literally anything about the episode, it would have been for the better. So it didn't have to be quite that terrible. It really didn't. I mean, it makes me want to vomit how much your suggestion to have Rhaegal die in this episode makes more sense.
Right. It makes 100% sense. And I have written out a list of things that they could change to turn this episode into a 10. And I think that's what bothers me most. For instance, instead of having Arya, because let me clarify that, where I'm coming from first. In the behind-the-scenes documentary, they're shooting, let me clarify for the audience, they're shooting a behind-the-scenes documentary in tandem with shooting season 8. So after every episode, they have about like a 30 to 40-minute video that they put up on HBO's YouTube about the behind-the-scenes. So you get a bit more perspective on D&D, which a lot of people have been calling Dumb and Dumber, and I am one of those people. They say that they wanted a character that you love on the ground of King's Landing, witnessing the destruction, like how horrible Daenerys is for killing all the people. So they chose Arya to be this character, which creates a shit ton of problems, first and foremost. But why wasn't this Davos?
I was about to say it should have just been Davos.
Davos grew up in Flea Bottom. He knows King's Landing better than anyone, and he's one of the most sensible characters on the show. And instead, he's just on the front lines with Jon swinging a sword around instead of... He's an advisor. Why is he on the front lines with Grey Worm and Jon? Like, these are his people. He would never fucking do this to the people of King's Landing, and he would never stand for this. Just having Arya, who also has massive problems, her and the Hound walk up to a siege city, a city that's just about to be under siege. They walk him through the gates. No one asks if they're bannermen. They look super suspicious. They both have swords. They're both armored. Yet, they let them right into the city. Arya and the Hound go up to the Red Keep as it's burning, and in a last-minute conversation, the Hound goes, Arya, you don't want revenge, do you? You really don't want revenge, do you? You've only been saying you want to kill Cersei since season 1, episode 9. You've been saying that you want to kill Cersei, and she's going to be coming down the stairs any moment. Why don't you just run off and forget that, so that your whole plotline this episode is a complete waste? Why don't you just go watch people burn and have a change of heart?
And Arya says, okay, that sounds like a great idea, Mr. Hound.
Even though she could just wait and stab Cersei, and I feel bad because I'm going on tangents, but so many things are connected that make no sense.
No, go ahead.
I'll skip forward a bit and leave Arya there at that part. Let's go to Cersei and Jaime.
Oh God.
Let's get this shit scene out of the way first. Not even that one. Jaime and Euron. So Euron has his entire fleet blown up by Daenerys. This is the first thing that happens on the siege of King's Landing. Daenerys dive bombs out of the sky, blows up Euron's entire fleet of boats mounted with a scorpion. Not a single bolt hits Drogon. Euron jumps off his ship, and the scene ends. This completely contradicts what happens in episode 4, where she dive bombs Euron's fleet, decides to ditch out on that plan because she's getting shot at, and flies away and retreats. She does the same thing in this episode, and all the critiques that I know I made and plenty of other people made were, why didn't she just scorch the entire fleet then and there? She does in this episode. So it completely negates that entire scene of Rhaegal's death in this episode, because she went through the Iron Fleet with no problem.
Here's an easy fix. Somebody mentioned she could have put armor on Drogon that made it so that the arrows couldn't pierce his flesh, maybe, and then it would have assumed that she thought about the weaknesses of the arrows, and that's why she didn't attack the first time, and that she's prepared the second time. That would have been a fix just like that. But no, you're right.
Right. Something simple like that. Like, she should have had some sort of takeaway from witnessing Rhaegal die. But she doesn't. And so it makes no sense to do this scene. It's practically the same scene, but she actually does what fans were saying she should do. Which makes no sense. Like you said, they could have done something where she goes, okay, they have these things, they're extremely dangerous. They hit my dragon from 3 miles away on a moving boat, and we were moving in the air. Like, these guys are really accurate. We should do something to protect Drogon. or at least they could have written something in where she might have some reservations about using Drogon in the siege of King's Landing because of how dangerous it is.
Yeah, or like maybe she has a spy put that green fire stuff in the lake, and then she sneaks up with Drogon and just ignites them all in one hit. That would be cool. But something that showed that she took thought into it and didn't just have magic powers the second time and not the first time.
Right, and I think that's where a lot of people are getting... there's people who are kind of watching the show and they turn off their brain and they just let it happen, which... more power to you if you can do that, but this just feels like the writing is insulting. I just watched the last episode. Why didn't she do that then? There's no written reason saying why she couldn't have done that then and why she didn't.
Well, it's kind of the same reason that they had all the goodbye scenes in the second episode where they spend a good half hour giving everybody this final scene because you might not see him next episode, and then none of those characters died. They do the same exact thing in this episode, or episode 4, where they're setting up like, oh, there's a lot of danger with these characters, and Daenerys could be vulnerable if she just flies in and attacks them. But then she does that the next episode, so there is no point to that scene whatsoever. Kind of like Jaime fighting Euron later in this episode, and Jaime gets stabbed, and then Euron gets stabbed, but then Jaime walks away and he's absolutely fine and in perfect health. So they just keep writing scenes that, like you're saying, if you shut off your brain, it looks really cool and it's really fun, but they don't make any goddamn sense, and they're completely pointless later on when everything they do later just completely negates it and takes away all the impact of everything that happened. And that's why it's so goddamn frustrating. Because it's like, I kind of liked the 4th episode. I thought it was the best one of the 4 so far, so I had to give it some benefit of the doubt. But then none of it fucking mattered, so what was the goddamn point? Because you get to this episode and then it's just all over, and now we got one more episode of just Dany being evil, and I already know what happens because everybody's posting spoilers of what happens at the end, and I'm not going to say them now because whatever.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I already know who sits on the Iron Throne, and it's kind of fucking annoying.
Like the cast members are posting them?
No, they leaked like everything. I personally haven't seen anything before, but there was a bunch of leaks, and when this episode aired, everything on the leak was true. So people were like, oh shit, that means the leaks are correct.
Yeah, Aaron, remember...
could you Facebook message me the leaks?
Remember the day before the episode, or 2 days before, when I was like, yeah, I saw a thing online that the Hound and the Mountain like fight and then they fall into a pit of fire? And,
oh, yeah.
And it was 100% true? Well, it was the same thing.
It wasn't a theory, it was a leak.
Well, it's somebody who worked on the set. He was just posting a thing online like, oh, here's a list of like things that happen in the episodes. And they've all been true so far because he worked on the show. So the person who sits on the Iron Throne is the absolute dumbest fucking choice. And it kind of makes me mad that there's another hour and a half and this is what we're going to get from it.
If it's not Jon or Tyrion, then...
It's not.
No, don't say anything.
Is it Sansa?
It's worse.
Don't say anything.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I just texted you it.
Me?
Yeah.
We'll do a little game with the audience. These two guys are going to go into the final episode knowing who sits on the throne. I'm going to go in blind. So these two can laugh at me next podcast as I'm going to probably be fuming. So that'll be a fun game to play.
Aaron, did you see it?
I saw it, yes.
Yeah. That's who it is. How mad does that make you?
Well, I said maybe like 32.3 seconds ago that the last episode was going to be bad, and I meant it.
Yep.
Oh, Jesus.
It's that
Anyway.
fucking bad.
Well, that brings up another question I had, which is possibly answered. I don't know. Don't answer me if I am right. But
I won't.
you would have thought that Daenerys just blowing up innocent people and not going after Cersei in the Red Keep makes no sense. But when Jaime and Cersei die, that I don't even know how to tell people to care about that anymore. That's such a huge plot point that would have mattered to me seasons ago. But Jaime and Cersei die under the Red Keep because it collapses on them. So a bunch of rocks fall on Jaime and Cersei, and Jaime holds Cersei, and he's just like, "We're all that matters now."
Yeah.
Completely foregoing Jaime's entire character arc over the entirety of the show. You would have hoped he could escape Cersei, but I guess he learned absolutely nothing.
Well, the annoying thing about that is they did start putting his character in through this arc where he's changing, and he started like he met Brienne in season 2 or 3, and then they started getting closer and more connected, and then he literally just wraps it and taps it, says peace, and it's like, oh, maybe he has this ulterior motive where he's gonna go kill Cersei, but it's like, nope.
No,
He meant it straight up. Nope, I just love my sister. That's all.
This
Durr.
is pussy good. And I think this is another thing that kills me, is the show writers have spit on, like, foreshadowing of prophecies.
Everything.
Yet they allow Jaime when, I forget what episode it was, it's early on, but Jaime's having a conversation and he says something along the lines of, they're talking about how they would like to go out or how they'd like to die, and he says he'd like to die in the arms of the loved one, and they give him that.
Well,
And
not
it
only
just
that,
feels so lazy.
you're talking about prophecies. I almost said Daenerys. Cersei's prophecy in the books and in the show, they did it, was that she was going to have 3 children and all of them were going to die. She was not going to marry a prince. She was going to marry a king. There's another one in there, I can't remember. But then the last one is she will die with the hands of the Valonqar around her throat. Valonqar means little brother, which is technically Jaime or Tyrion. And my brother pointed out, well, technically he had his hands around her throat when they got crushed to death. It's like, really? Like that's what the prophecy meant? Is just that Jaime comes back and then they get crushed to death?
Well,
And I got it. Oh, go for it.
My point was with that was I didn't think that they wanted to match Cersei's prophecy. I think the writers were just honoring what Jaime said. So Jaime didn't even say a prophecy. He just said he'd like to die in the arms of a loved one. I think D&D wanted to honor what Jaime said there. I don't even think they acknowledged Cersei's prophecy.
No,
I think
but
that's what kills me most.
They do,
about
because
it.
everything else came true with it. She did marry a king. Her 3 children did die. Aaron might remember the other one because there is something else. But then, oh yeah, she'll be overthrown by a younger, more beautiful queen, and she'll die with the hands of Valonqar around her throat. Those were the 4 things.
Let's be honest, though. There's a higher chance that D&D forgot about it than that they didn't.
That's very true. And my biggest problem with that scene is, so in the past couple seasons and the past couple episodes even, they've been leaving these like giant cliffhanger moments where somebody gets crushed but then they're okay. Sam's surrounded by zombies but he's alive, and a character's in the nick of danger and then they're okay. Or even in this episode, Arya gets blown up and lit on fire, but she's fine. Arya gets crushed, but she's okay. And they keep doing this over and over and over and over and over and over again. Constantly. And now we have a moment where Cersei and Jaime get crushed, but then it cuts away, just like they do every other moment. So now I'm really confused as to what to think about that. Intuitively, it's like, okay, so they are officially dead, or are they just going to pop up again next episode? It's like, give us a definitive answer. Don't leave us with stupid shit like that, because they constantly do that, and then it's like, oh, but the character was fine the whole time. Well, now we're confused. I know that they're dead, but it's just annoying. Like, why can't...
It's a huge problem in tone,
yeah.
really, which is what they can't figure that out at all.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't work when you do it 100 times and then you do kill a character with that same style, or like you're saying, tone. When you do it and you mean to kill a character, I just get confused. Like, oh, okay, so they are dead? But when Jamie got knocked in the water and he was drowning, and then the next episode he's perfectly fine, okay, I don't know what to think now. It's not like I'm like, oh, are they really dead? It's like, no, it's like, what am I supposed to think? Are they dead? They're dead, right? Cool.
That in conjunction with not a single character, not Daenerys or Arya or Jon, went to confirm that Cersei died. Like, the entire objective of the siege is to get Cersei, and no one even attempted to kill her or confirm her death.
Yeah.
Daenerys never tried once to officially kill, or to directly kill Cersei. Arya had a change of heart at Cersei's doorstep. She could have waited another minute and could have at least given her a stab in the gut.
Or the Hound could have just like punched her in the face.
Here's what they could have done. Arya could have waited a minute, stabbed her in the gut. Rocks could have fell. Then she realizes that she has to get out of here, and she could have said something like, I'll just let this... She was like, you want your throne? Here, have it fall upon you. Or something like, I'll just leave you here to die, but I wanted to get my stab in for my father. Then Jamie, instead of already coming up to... it's like a map room that a lot of the scene takes place. Jamie goes up there no matter what. He had a stab wound in his stomach. You could have had both Cersei and Jamie stabbed, and you would have at least given Arya something. Arya could have done... she didn't even have to kill her. She just had to get a little bit of a comeuppance in. Because Cersei did nothing in the entire episode, and her only dialogue this episode was between Qyburn and Jamie. Never once did she have any interaction with Daenerys, Arya, Jon, no one.
This is probably going to be a little more controversial to say, but what I feel like they should have done, the way they were leading up to it and everything, is just have Jamie actually save Cersei, because, like you're saying, the whole point of everybody going there was to kill Cersei, but apparently the dragons didn't want to just go burn down the whole castle when they clearly showed that they could have. Dany would rather murder all the innocent people in King's Landing than kill Cersei. So all that aside, when they're down in their little crypt area or whatever the fuck it was, Jamie actually saves Cersei, puts her on a boat, and she just sails off and lives. And then Jamie bleeds out and dies. That would have been a much better written final part of it. Everybody would assume Cersei's dead, and they still would have won. But then Cersei just she goes off, and big shock, she doesn't die. That would have been a much better moment than just lazily they get crushed to death. Maybe, we don't know, because they're fucking annoying with that shit.
Yeah, I would take anything at this point
other
than being crushed by rocks.
There's so many, and it's not even hard to think of these things, but there's so many better ways to end parts of these, or at least fix them. Like, maybe Jamie just doesn't get stabbed in that battle with Euron. Because what was the point of him being stabbed at all? Why was he stabbed twice in both sides if later he just was moving rocks out of the way and climbing around and going all around King's Landing like nothing happened? There's no fucking point to him having that happen. Then why did it happen? Just don't do it. It's so much easier to just not do it than to put it in there and then ignore it. Because that's, like you're saying, that's insulting to the intelligence of the viewer. Because they assume, oh, they'll just forget about what happened less than 5 minutes ago. It's like, what? It's so aggravating.
I wouldn't mind just clarifying the good parts of this episode really quick. Jamie and Tyrion have a good final goodbye. That's
Agreed.
Probably the best part of the episode. Arya and the Hound, if you can forgive Arya for going to King's Landing for no reason other than to witness Dany go insane, they had good interactions, and she finally calls him Sandor, and they have an end to their arc. That's a plus if you ignore why Arya's there and why they couldn't have this conversation at the gates of King's Landing instead. And I would say...
Oh, I also think I'm honestly surprised, going off of what Dustin was saying, how I'm surprised that they showed the conflict as a slaughter from the very beginning, and I'm surprised they didn't just try to milk the fact that there was a conflict, there was a war at all for the drama, and try to make it seem like it was even for like the first 50 minutes of the episode. I'm surprised that they just went right to the slaughter. That was positive.
That's a good point. It was very one-sided, which they didn't. Which
is refreshing for the dollar store level drama that the rest of the season is known for.
I was gonna say Euron had him dying was good, but then he said the cringiest line in the entire series.
I'm the one that killed Jaime Lannister.
Which is also the most fitting because he is the cringiest character, so they did something right.
He is cringy.
I was a really big fan of Varys being killed in the beginning. Like, I thought that whole scene was... I mean, it was a little goofy with the letter being burned. Oh, what does it say? But, like, that whole scene when he's standing there getting ready to die and then Tyrion, like, grabs his arm and whatnot, I thought all that was really well done.
I thought it was well done, except that,
it didn't make any sense.
I don't know, it didn't make sense for Tyrion to do that. I trust Tyrion's character that he would, at least wait to see if Daenerys was, like, a murderous psycho before tattling on Varys, who he's known forever. I don't know.
And Tyrion also has no reason whatsoever to be doing anything for Cersei, really. I don't understand why he's still being so loyal to her, but then the very next scene is extremely disloyal to her. It doesn't make any sense. Because then he goes and frees his brother. It's like, well, then why did you get Varys killed if you were just immediately going to go over and save your brother? Why not just save both?
Ooh, I read something interesting that was Varys was trying to poison Daenerys with the children giving her food, and I thought that was a cool detail.
That's too smart for Dumb and Dumber.
Right. I wish they wrote that in because otherwise, number one, why would Varys be writing treasonous letters in Dragonstone? Like, is he not one of the smartest characters in the whole series? Why would he be actively operating or plotting against Daenerys in her own headquarters? But more into that, what Varys did wasn't even treason. Treason would imply that Daenerys is the rightful person to be on the throne, but she's not. All he was doing was telling the truth that Tyrion told him. So Tyrion also did something treasonous, which means Sansa did something treasonous, which means Jon did something treasonous. So all those characters should be killed if this is treason. I know that he was the one specifically writing letters out to presumably other lords and houses telling the truth. But
I don't know.
I just find that a very odd reason to execute him and to be tattled on by Tyrion, his best friend, which Varys has saved multiple times. It just did not make much sense, and I knew right then and there, because this is how the episode opens, right then and there I knew that's when Daenerys was officially going to burn King's Landing, because I'm like, well, if she just killed Varys, a guy who's proven that he will do whatever it takes for the good of the realm, and he represents the people, he's always been about about the common person. That's why he fights for them. He's never been a lord. He's always been just a guy who came from nothing and just built his way up naturally into his place of power. He's always used his power for good. I knew right then and there when she burned him that if he's a symbol for the people, then that she would kill the people right then and there. So when she actually chose to, when she was perched up on King's Landing, I wasn't very shocked or surprised. Just because in my mind, her killing Varys already meant she made up her mind to burn everyone there.
Well, and I don't know if she... That's the thing. It doesn't make sense that she burns all the people and not the people who she was there to burn. That's the part of it where I'm still kind of really confused of where she turned to all the people of King's Landing are my enemies and not just, hey, those people who killed my dragon and killed Missandei are my enemy.
The writers and the director of the episode thought that showing Daenerys take 3 breaths really heavily got that point across.
But why did she take 3 breaths really heavily a week after all the shit happened, or 2 days, 3 days, whatever it was, and not the moment that it happened? Why didn't she just start massacring everybody episode 4 when she's still right outside the gates with her big-ass dragon and she sees Missandei's head get cut off? Because she could easily fly over that and then just start burning the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, let's clear up why everyone's so mad. So let's see. So if we look at Daenerys' overall arc across the entire series and what she just chose to do, that meant Missandei supported genocide or murder of countless babies and children. Jorah died in the name of a queen who was going to kill children and babies. Grey Worm is complicit with murder and actively threw a spear at an unarmed man.
Yes, which was awesome.
That means Khal Drogo died for someone who was just going to allow everyone to be killed, even though she taught Drogo compassion and told his men not to rape and all that, but, you know, I guess killing babies is perfectly okay.
Well, her men started raping women, too, in the streets.
Well, let me clarify that. That's a whole other point that my brother was super pissed off at. The fact that they had a northerner trying to rape a girl made no sense. They just fought the White Walkers 2 episodes to save humanity. How stupid do the writers think we are? Did they not just save the world? Why would they immediately be trying to rape? Dude, you just saved people, and you have a northern soldier, to say the least, trying to rape. Why wasn't this like a Dothraki?
It would have been more thematically relevant if it were one of Daenerys' troops.
Right, and then Jon would have killed a Dothraki. Then that would have sealed him as someone to be truly against Daenerys. He would have been like, hey, we're not for this. And that whole scene right there just blows my mind, that a northern soldier would try and rape someone in the middle of a battle.
And speaking of Dothraki, how are there any more Dothraki alive? Didn't they all just go suicide into the middle of the dead and then just all get massacred? And now there's still hundreds of them left?
Yeah, this whole series has been retconning the episode that happened before it, which is super frustrating. They'll take what they did in the last episode, like we've talked about earlier, where Dany decides not to dive bomb anymore, and they don't even write in a reason why she's not going to attack the Iron Fleet, and then she does the same thing this episode.
Yeah.
You just fought to save everyone in Westeros, and now you're burning the remaining people in Westeros.
And honestly,
make up your mind.
So you were talking about how everybody, if Daenerys is the Mad Queen and she murders everybody, like Missandei is supporting genocide and whatnot, you were going off of all that. And personally, that's why I like that change in her character to become that. Because the show's not meant to be black and white, it's supposed to be gray. And this moment was supposed to make us feel shocked and horrified because, Dany doesn't have any advisors anymore telling her she shouldn't do this anymore. So she always had it in her to do these horrible things, and I feel like they did a good job at letting us know that early on, which is why I feel like this is probably a moment that, George probably told Dumb and Dumber and is probably going to happen in the books, and it makes a whole lot of sense that she does ultimately become the villain of the series and she does massacre a bunch of innocent people. It's just the reasoning behind it that they did it that makes no sense. But I like the fact that they did it. The fact that it's not taking the easy road out and making Dani fucking Jesus anymore. It's showing you that she is still just a young girl who's mad with power at this point. And I think that's great. I think that's really cool. But they just did it horribly. And it makes no sense why she snapped and why in this moment she snapped and not prior, is what I mean.
Yeah, that you're 100% right. The idea itself is
amazing. It's great.
Completely justified. It makes sense. But they did it. It's like they made their mind this season to do it. They've alluded to her in the past seasons. They're like, oh, in the past season she mentioned that she would take what's hers through fire and blood. Yeah, but in past seasons, she also told Dothraki to stop raping. She would constantly help women and children. She would make sure that women were constantly in her advisory roles. She consulted with a lot of the Dothraki women who taught her how to speak the Dothraki language were primarily her biggest allies in the early seasons. That's why this change, it was so sudden.
Well, I would disagree a little bit, where you're saying that they didn't really have that, like, foreshadowed too much, because I think it was completely foreshadowed. They have the vision of hers that she has in, like, season 2, when she's in the House of the Undying and she's approaching the throne and all the ash is falling. You have the moment with her brother when she stares at him and watches him die in front of her. But what I agree with you with is that they 100% always show that she is trying to help women and children and the innocents and the people and whatnot. And that's the part that makes zero sense. If she were to turn around and then just burned all of Cersei's forces and killed all those innocent soldiers who threw their arms down and were giving up, that would have made 100% more sense than her going straight for children and burning the shit out of them. That part made no goddamn sense, but everything else made 100%, because she crucified people, for God's sake. Just because they were slave owners, she crucified the shit out of them. That's horrible.
She did things, let me clarify. She did things to people that she declared her enemy.
Exactly.
She never declared a women and children her enemy, yet that was her primary target.
Yeah.
She declared her brother an enemy, so she was okay with him dying. She declared Dickon Tarly and his father, Randall Tarly, as enemies. She gave them a chance to surrender. They said they wouldn't, so then she executed them. She gave the people of, at that time it was Marine, after coming from Yunkai, she told them that, hey, like, if you're a slave owner, I'll kill you. And you are marked an enemy under my new rule. So everyone she's killed or shown brutality against has been someone who's openly taken arms up against her. She's never done anything to show that she would kill innocent people.
Yeah.
And you could write in a reason why. I think that's what kills me most. I know you're saying it was foreshadowed, and I agree. They always foreshadowed that she could be pulled in either a benevolent queen or she could be an awful tyrant. It could have gone either way, and that was always set up. But in this season alone, they really just put their foot on the gas on her turning from good guy to bad guy. It happened so fast that there wasn't a reason that they could think of to make her snap on the innocent people. And that's where we're coming in with all these easy edits that could have turned this episode into a good episode and made this idea work much better. All they had to do was something like shoot at her dragon during the surrender, and that would have given Cersei something to do. It would have been a trick up her sleeve, and she would have been able to then cause Dany to snap and that would have used Dany's mercy against her.
Or something.
Her defining character trait. She would have used her mercy that she didn't want to kill innocent people as an opportunity to attack a dragon, and then that would make her snap because you're attacking her child, hence she'll kill all the people.
Or because, like, in earlier seasons, the people, specifically, like, the people that she saves and whatnot, because she could think that she's saving these people from Cersei, but maybe they don't want to be saved. And in the past, whenever she saved people or did stuff like this, like, people would come up to her trying to give her free pizza. They'd be like, pizza, pizza, and all that, where they're, like, surrounding her. I know they're saying pizza, but, like, all the people usually love her, because she saved them from, like, slave owners and dictatorships and all that. And now what if she looked down after, quote-unquote, saving these people and getting all the soldiers to throw down their arms and finally ring the bells, and the people looked up at her in disgust, and she looked down on them and saw the look of disgust and saw how frightened these people were of her and how much they looked at her as the enemy, and that's what made her snapped. Anything that's more than just her looking at the bells and breathing heavily. Because I just don't see the connection to murdering innocent people and I'm breathing heavily because I'm having a panic attack or something. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in that moment why she was so pensive and why she was having an internal struggle at that exact moment. And even then, bringing the people into question, which I want to give a old Game of Thrones or early seasons of Game of Thrones, the common people usually were given some sort of spotlight, whether it was throwing cow shit at Joffrey's head or the faith militant representing the people. They always had like some sort of gauge on how the public felt about people. And Marjorie was a character who constantly dealt with the public. The King's Landing population had a character in a way. It always had some sort of representation throughout seasons 1 through at least 5. And then somewhere along the lines, obviously where George R.R. Martin left the show after season 3, and you leave it up to D&D, they kind of forgot to represent the character or the people of King's Landing. And they never really showed them anymore. At this point, from what I understand, if King's Landing is in such horrific shape, from, let's just go back season 7, what was it? Or was it season 6, where Daenerys explodes the supply line between Highgarden and King's Landing. So, you know that King's Landing is practically out of food and starving at this point. All you had to do is wait. You could cause a war of attrition against Cersei. That's one of the most common ways in medieval times that sieges were won. If you're sieging the person and they don't have a way out of a castle or a city, you can just let them starve. Hence, this attack didn't even need to happen. If you just destroyed Euron's fleet, which is established in the first part of the battle, then you can wait out until they just starve and overthrow Cersei themselves. And you don't even have to use an army. You just had to use one dragon. And that would have written out the army that they somehow randomly spawned after episode 3. We already declared that Daenerys lost pretty much everything, except in episode 4 they retcon it and say she only lost half of her Dothraki, even though all of them died. They could have just used the one dragon, destroyed Euron's fleet, and then just waited it out if they wanted to. But obviously that wouldn't be a very exciting show, so they went with her just snapping because
of plot.
Breathing heavy, and plot needs to happen, and we didn't know how to write it.
I don't think it's that they didn't know how to write it. I honestly just think that they wanted to be done with the show, and they just threw together whatever the hell they thought would work. And
I think that's another thing we should clarify for the audience, is that the outside factors of this season come into play way more than prior seasons. And I think D&D getting a Star Wars deal from Disney to shoot a whole trilogy really affects this, because HBO gave them a blank check to make this season as long as they wanted. They could have done 10 episodes and paced it better, but they opted to do 6. So it really is just, like you said, they wanted a way out and they took it.
Yeah, they stopped giving a shit, but everybody else who worked on it is still putting in the best that they can do, because all the actors, all the visual effects artists, all the stunt people, they lit like 22 people on fire for this episode.
Right.
All these people give a shit, and they really want to make something great. And then you have the 2 guys at the top, like you're saying, with a blank check to create whatever the fuck they want, which is something that every single artist, like, who works in any industry would die to have. And they know it's going to be seen by millions. And these guys are like, but it's not Star Wars. So let's not even give a shit. Let's not even try. Let's not even push it back. Hey, we need an extra year. The fans just have to wait 3 years instead of 2, but we're going to make it perfect. No, they just throw it together and say, deal with it. And I think that's why everyone's upset the most at it. Because you could just tell they didn't put any effort into trying to make things make sense. And they had twice as long to make this season than any other season. There's no excuse for the shit that they've done. And it's just disappointing. But we're coming up to the 50-something minute mark. So I just want to end it with saying that there's a petition online right now to remake season 8. And I think that is an amazing idea. And I personally wouldn't even mind being the one to write it at this point, because I feel like anybody could do better than what they're doing with this shit. It's just lazy. They don't care, and it shows.
Here's the thing. People are complaining. I'm complaining. Or I'm not even saying I shouldn't say I'm complaining. I'm just critiquing common sense. I do this because I love this show. I love these characters. I love the world. I wouldn't critique this just for the fun of it. Like, I'm not trying to troll anyone into liking this. If someone out there really likes this episode, power to you. I agree. I can't, because it just is not what I would tune into Game of Thrones for.
Yeah.
And it was a show that I truly loved, and maybe it was the escapism of just going into a world that was so well crafted and believable that I really enjoyed. But it's just turned into schlock. And if they really were able to petition it, I could totally wipe this season out from memory and still enjoy the show if they redid it. That's how much I care about this series. If they reshot the whole thing and I knew everything that happens, including I'll watch the finale next week, I could forgive all of it if they reshot it and they did it a better job in the writing and paced it better. I would be completely okay with that. It sucks to notice that outside influences completely just ruined this series right at the end. There was some shaky things happening from seasons 5, 6, and 7, but nothing too damning. And now this season is just nothing is tying together in a satisfying way.
And I'm talking to people now, and even they say how much they like this season, and like you said, that's fine. You can enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with that. But they, at the same time, are still pointing out, but this didn't make sense, and this didn't make sense, and this didn't make sense. I still liked it, but it didn't make sense. And it's so obvious to everybody watching it that so much of it doesn't make any sense. But we're probably going to have to cut it at this point. I feel like we're just kind of beating a dead horse at this, like, right now anyways. But thank you for joining us. If you liked the episode, sorry you had to put up with us. If you didn't, then let us know what you thought. All right, have a good one. Peace.
Peace.